Right then, people. Ange has been relieved of his duties, as the statement says. We're going to go through that statement. I'm also going to reveal a poll I've done very recently on my Twitter account to try and get an understanding of how Spurs fans feel. If you're a Spurs fan, let me know how you're feeling in the comments down below. I think this is a very personal statement. Very personal, like surprisingly personal statement for what is clearly a difficult decision. From what I'd sort of read and heard, this is a decision that really wasn't taken lightly. And the split in how Tottenham fans feel about it is really, really interesting. And there's a difficult balance to be had between being sensible and this being the sensible decision. I think that's one thing that could probably be agreed, is it is the sensible decision. Is it the right decision? Time will only tell with that. I'll also give my take on it and what I would have done, which I'm still kind of like up in the air with. And we'll also talk about the runners and riders here, because Thomas Frank and Silva, but the omission of another name, I think, is very revealing when you pair it up with some of the quotes from the statement here. Ange, of course, departs here following a review of performances, which I think is also quite revealing. So many revealing comments in this statement for me. And after significant reflection, and that is what I was hearing, apparently like the decision was not done kind of lightly or quickly. And even just like halfway through this week, the fact that the news came out that apparently he's going to be sacked, but then it was so quiet for so long after that, I think it was one where it was obviously up for debate, as it's come to be. But the decision to do it is from what I've heard, is with a heavy heart. And what's really interesting from all the comments I've seen online is there's sort of a soft feeling of, okay, we should probably do this. The performances haven't been good enough. As it says in the statement, 78 points from the last 66 games. Some interesting stats from one person saying, in the last 12 games, for example, 8% wins. I think in the last 45 games, it's like 29% wins, something like that. Like, it has got progressively worse in terms of the league table. Of course, there is a context to that in terms of the injuries and things like that. But was that enough? That was the question here. And so for those of you who feel like, look, we saw this with Erik Ten Hag. He kind of got a performance and kind of as much as a performance, a victory, a trophy. And that is important. Of course it is, but how much credence can you give to that? It's the heart and the head here. And so those who are sort of feeling this with their heart, which again, I don't think you're wrong. You feel very strong, feel very, very strongly about this. And I spoke to Flav about this, Flav who was Ange out. But then, this moment happens where you win that trophy, the first trophy in 17 years. And you've now got the fans on side. And how powerful is that? That is a very, very powerful thing. I think there would have been those sort of quiet suspicions, like, let's go with it, if he'd been given the job, been able to continue the job. But as I say, this is really, really revealing for me. So let's read it. Following a review of performances, and after significant reflection, the club can announce that Postecoglou has been relieved of his duties. Ange joined us, blah, blah, blah. We know all that. And he said, while writing a new chapter in our history by leading us to the UEFA Europa League glory in Bilbao last month, an achievement that will live with us forever. I want to come back to that. We are extremely grateful for Ange for his commitment and his contribution during his 2 years at the club. Ange will always be remembered as only third manager in history. So kind of buttering it up, really, let's be honest. Which is understandable, okay? And obviously this goes through a lot of different people, I'm guessing, before you put it out there, because I am going to pick it apart, right? However, the board has unanimously concluded that it is in the best interest of the club for a change to take place. Following a positive start to the first season with Ange, where, everyone was on the bandwagon. We were all drinking the Kool-Aid. And rightly so. Like, it was exciting, attractive football. There were goals. There was sort of fun. You had maverick players doing maverick things. It was everything you kind of want at Spurs. And that idea of to dare is to do is that's so huge when it comes to this, what Tottenham want their identity to be. And in terms of leading them towards and away from sort of the Spursy title that they've had for so long, you are going to have to do that. sometimes through unconventional ways. So the thing that is dangerous here is that the sensible route is to go, look, let's get someone in who's got a bit more variability to their management, who can come at this from a different angle and improve the squad, but crucially improve the output. We will have spoken on this channel. Subscribe if you're new, by the way. We've spoken about this channel about the lack of ability to win the XG battle for Tottenham. That's consistently a problem. And when we're talking about it's got to be more than that in terms of the points, the performances needed to be better and needed to be getting you closer to getting yourself over the line. But that is constantly mixed with this fact that, like, he is someone who does inspire belief in things and its ability to dream, because he's happy to dream himself. And that is so powerful. So there is a cruelty and a fairness to this whole situation of him being relieved of his duties, because, as it says, 78 points from 66 games is not great. 30, culminating in the worst ever Premier League finish last season. I saw one tweet, someone talking about how, look, if it was, one of the newly promoted teams, or, Everton, right, finishing on 38 points last season, there would be massive discussions over the management here, right? So for this to be the case with Tottenham, that is not good enough. And I think he's willing to say that himself, right? But it's one where, like, for someone who was about it being more than points, it kind of is the points, but it's the performances as well. And let's get to the thing that I think is really, really interesting here, because it is crucial that we are able to compete on multiple fronts. And we believe a change of approach, that word screamed at me. Change of approach will give us the strongest chance for the coming season and beyond. And I think that's it. This is the sensible decision. But again, that doesn't mean it's the right decision. And I think Flav's right when it comes to, like, my feelings on this, is like, give him a go. I think it's the dispersion that you've seen from Ange's performances and the points that have come with that. That is the problem here for the people higher up. They want that a bit more continuity in what's happening. They want a bit more, I guess, guile over full throttle. I mean, that said, there's been several games where Spurs haven't had the ball a lot, but the approach has been quite clear. And I think that word of approach is important here. What they want, they don't want these injuries. And again, another thing that you don't really know unless you give him another season is is the injury thing down to his approach. And so a new manager, when it comes to approach, that's what I think is interesting here as well, because when they're saying they need a change of approach and you're then hearing who are the runners and riders to take over, it sounds like it's Thomas Frank and it's Silva, right? And there's a name missing there. Areola. Why is Areola not supposedly in the frame? I think that's quite clear. Because if you look at the Premier League running metrics this year, in terms of sprints, Bournemouth and Tottenham are miles out in front. And when you look at the injuries this season, I'm pretty sure, certainly in that period, right? And that's why Bournemouth fell off a little bit. Bournemouth and Spurs were the two really, really struggling with the injuries in that middle section of the season. And so that's why I think they're looking at someone like Thomas Frank, who's been able to go, okay, how do we set up against top teams that we're supposedly not better? How do we get better when it comes to the XG battle? How do we evolve and then go and beat teams with a bit more open football? And then Marco Silva, again, similar thing, in terms of bringing in these talents that are have a certain level of technical quality. I think Silva's in this because of the style of football that he plays. He plays great football and has done great things with a solid team, obviously, of good players. But I think you can see him. He does look like a Tottenham manager in terms of the way his teams play and the way Tottenham teams kind of should play. So he's quite a sophisticated manager. Thomas Frank, I think, has the man management to jump into this scenario and change the feeling. Spurs fans, a lot of them are really, really hurt. Let's get to that poll, by the way. Spurs fans are really, really hurt at the situation here because you want it to be more than that, don't you? And I absolutely get that. I think in my gut, if I was a Spurs fan, I would have gone, give him a go, give him a chance. Like, he does have something special about him. He really does. But if you take that out of it and you just look at the performances this year, it has been poor and he has been stubborn. And I think that is a problematic thing. To be so bound to one thing gives you some answers, but the test is different every week. And so you need a range of answers, I think. I think we're coming to the end of that idea of just have one identity and that'll be it. You've got to have so many different ways to get it done. And so someone like Thomas Frank would be a really, really good option from that point of view. I think both would be solid options. What they're going to have to battle with is the pain of having someone get you over the line, which is what they've been trying to do prior to that. Two managers who were trophy winners, that's what they do, didn't make it work. Then you had someone who was a bit more soulful than that, a bit more of a dreamer than that. And he's got that done, and you've called it a day. So, as I say, cruel and fair, kind of in equal measure, right? Let's go to that poll. And then, here we go. Let's go to that poll. So, obviously, there's another option for if you're not a Spurs fan, you want to see the vote. 25% saying the correct decision. 30.9% saying the incorrect decision. And as I say, a lot more comments of people saying, like, feeling sick, feeling like gutted, feeling like, what's the point if it's not going to be about this element of romance, which I absolutely get. And I think the power of that romance is what allowed Spurs fans to buy into Ange on an incredibly high level at the start of last season and going into this season as well. So, yeah, man, it's grim. It is a bit grim. It feels like I'm a softie, so I think I would have gone, I just need to know. I just need to know if this could pan out. But they've gone a sensible route. I would say, I feel like Thomas Frank it would be a really, really good shout here. I think his sort of soft skills, his ability with the media is strong. I think he's got a high stock, and I think he plays good enough football. And I think with the Champions League as well, I think actually with a good squad, he might be able to kind of play good football, but also win games and get it done in that smart way, which I think with the caliber of teams that Tottenham are going to have to go up against in the next season in the Champions League, I sort of lean towards him slightly. But let me know your thoughts, how you're feeling about this one. And yeah, I'm sure you'll let me know where I've got it wrong. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.